There comes a moment in every journey where the tide turns, not on the outside but within. It is not marked by fireworks or fanfare, but by a subtle shift of consciousness. The signs may be invisible to others, but unmistakable to you. You feel it, you know it. You are not hoping anymore, you are knowing. Your world has not yet changed, but your reaction to it has. And that is the sign, that is the whisper of victory. You no longer seek proof because you have seen the proof in imagination. You are not trying to get there, you are dwelling in the end. You walk with the weightless confidence of one who already possesses what they once pursued. It is not arrogance, it is awareness. You understand that what you imagine with feeling becomes fact, and because you have seen the end clearly, lovingly, it must come to pass. You stop chasing. You stop pleading. You stop asking the world to give you what you've already claimed. Why knock on the door of a house you already live in? Now the signs increase, numbers repeat. People mention the very thing you've imagined. Time folds, events collide. The world begins to echo your assumption. But the greatest sign is this. You feel peace without a reason, joy without a cause, gratitude without the gift in hand. That is creation. That is how you win. Do not be swayed by delay. Delay is not denial. It is the shadow of fulfillment preparing to take form. Let patience be your proof. The longer you hold the vision, the louder the universe responds. This is not fantasy. It is law. You have stepped into the version of yourself who already holds the desire. That is why the old you seems foreign. That is why old habits feel heavy, because they no longer belong to the version of you that wins. And you are about to win big, not by chance, not by effort, but by faith in the unseen. Faith in the real, the imagine you did not beg for it. You believed it. You felt it. And that is the greatest power there is. So let the signs multiply. Let the world marvel. But no, the victory was won. The moment you imagined it and believed. Now, let it come. When you close your eyes and retreat into the sacred silence within, you may notice something strange beginning to unfold. The world around you, once so stubborn and fixed, begins to respond differently. Not through effort, not through toil, but through a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in tone. What changed? Not the world, not the people, not the system. What changed was you. Your inner conviction became stronger than your doubt. Your inner knowing became louder than your senses. And when that happens, the outer world has no choice but to reflect the truth of your inner reality. It is not magic. It is not manipulation. It is law. What you accept as true within you must express itself without you. And this truth cannot be grasped intellectually alone. It must be felt. It must become a living experience within you. The moment you feel the quiet assurance of it is done, without needing proof, you have entered the realm of true creation. You are no longer asking. You are not hoping. You are dwelling in the end. When this inner conviction takes root, everything around you begins to move in harmony with it. People change. Opportunities emerge. Circumstances bend. Why? Because consciousness is the only reality. You do not have to fight against the world. You have to feel from the place where the world has already responded. You see, it's not about changing the mirror. It's about changing what stands before it. Your reflection is only ever echoing who you are being on the inside. Think of a time when you knew something deeply, even though there was no proof. Perhaps you felt certain a job would be yours, that a person would call, that a door would open. And you waited not with anxiety, but with peace. That peace was not passive, it was power. And soon enough, your outer world delivered exactly what your inner world had already accepted. But this inner knowing cannot be forced. It arises when you have truly surrendered to the end you desire, when you have let go of how, and rested in the assumption that it is already so. This is not wishful thinking. It is embodiment. You become the one who already has it, and from that state, all things flow. Sometimes the world still looks unchanged, even when you've shifted within. But don't be fooled. The seed planted in the soil does not sprout the moment after planting. It rests, unseen, gathering strength below the surface. So too do your assumptions take root before they bloom into form. Your job is not to dig up the seed in doubt, but to continue living in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. So if today you feel an unshakable stillness in your heart, if you sense that calm assurance, despite no visible sign, pay attention. That is not nothing. That is not emptiness. That is the confirmation the world has already begun to yield to your knowing. Now let it unfold. Let it rise. Let it become flesh. Because what you believe in the silence, the world must echo in sound. When you truly awaken to the truth of your creative power, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop chasing. The frantic energy that once drove you to force, to beg, to overthink begins to dissolve. You realize that nothing you desire is outside of you. You do not have to run after it, because it was never running from you. You were only running from your own belief that you didn't already have it. Taste implies distance. It implies lack. It suggests that what you want is over there, and you must exhaust yourself to get to it. But this is not how creation works. True manifestation is not born from effort, but from alignment. The moment you stop striving and start embodying the version of yourself who already has what you seek, the chase ends, and attraction begins. You begin to understand that your imagination is not just fantasy. It is the womb of all things. What you persistently dwell upon in consciousness, with feeling and belief, must express itself in form. So you no longer beg for the outcome. You assume the outcome. You no longer plead for change. This shift is not passive. It is powerful. To let go is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the silent knowing that what you have assumed in imagination is already unfolding in time. There is no need to monitor, to manipulate, to obsess. You don't check the soil every hour after planting a seed. You trust the process, you water it with faith, and tend to it with patience. So it is with your desire. And something beautiful happens when you stop chasing. Your energy shifts. You become magnetic. People feel it. Circumstances arrange themselves without effort. That which once felt out of reach now begins to move toward you. Not because you chased it, but because you finally became a vibrational match to it. The law of consciousness does not respond to need. It responds to being. You do not get what you want. You get what you are. The truth is, the more you release your grip, the faster it arrives. Not because you gave up, but because you gave in to the end. You surrender to the outcome you already accepted in imagination. You trusted that unseen forces were moving on your behalf, and they are. So now you sit in peace. You walk in confidence. You speak as one who already possesses the thing once longed for. This is not delusion, it is creation. You are no longer the seeker. You are the source. What you once chased now arrives gently with grace. Not by pursuit, but by permission. And the world, sensing your stillness, responds. Not because you demanded it, but because you no longer needed it to validate what you already knew. You stopped chasing. And in doing so, you became the one who always had it. There comes a moment on your path when the veil begins to thin, and the invisible becomes felt through the visible. You start to notice the odd timing of events, the repetition of numbers, the sudden mention of a topic you were just thinking about. A stranger speaks words that answer a silent question. A friend calls just as you were picturing them. These are not coincidences. These are confirmations. The outer world begins to echo your inner world with startling precision. This is not fantasy, nor is it superstition. It is law. Your consciousness, when it is focused and sustained with feeling, begins to impress itself upon the field of experience. And the universe, obedient and intimate, begins to reflect that impression through symbols, patterns and alignments that defy logic, but feel undeniably personal. At first, these synchronicities seem strange, even laughable. You dismiss them, you think, that's weird. But then they repeat. You glance at the clock at the same time every day, You keep seeing the same number on license plates, receipts, billboards. Songs play at the right moment. Conversations mirror your private thoughts. You begin to feel watched, not in fear, but in wonder. It is as if life itself is responding to your inner movement. That is exactly what is happening. These are the signs that the bridge of incidents has begun to form. You are walking, step by step, into the scene you have imagined, and life, as it always does, is whispering. It's unfolding. You no longer feel separate from your desire. Instead, you feel a divine intimacy with it. The world is not pushing against you. It is participating with you. These signs are not meant to be worshipped, but acknowledged. They are not the destination, but mile markers on the way. They are reminders that the thing you imagined is not only possible, it is already forming. Your role is not to chase the signs, but to remain in the state of the wish fulfilled. The signs are evidence that your state is becoming solid, that your inner assumption is drawing forth its reflection. The more you persist in your inner conviction, the more these synchronicities will increase. You will feel the thrill of being in alignment, not because everything is happening at once, but because everything is happening with meaning. Even delays carry purpose. Even silence speaks. Life is no longer random. It is responsive. It is intimate. It is precise. And so you move through your day with awareness. You notice without needing. You observe without grasping. The signs don't make you believe. They mirror your belief. And when they appear, you smile. Not with surprise, but with certainty. You know what they mean. You know what you've done. You have imagined deeply. You have believed silently. And now the world is answering. It always does. There is a sacred moment in the journey of creation when, though nothing in the outer world has changed, a stillness arises within. No announcement is made. No visible signs point to your success. And yet, you feel peace. A deep, unshakable calm that rests not on logic, not on evidence, but on something far more powerful. Knowing this peace is not the absence of storms. It is the presence of faith. And that faith is not blind. It is rooted in experience. The experience of already having received what the world has not yet delivered. You see, when you fully assume the state of the wish fulfilled, when you have entered that inner sanctuary, where your desire already lies, the striving ends, not because the desire is gone, but because it is done. You are no longer seeking. You are no longer questioning. You are no longer bargaining with time or fearing delay. You have arrived in feeling, and that arrival is real. It is marked not by fanfare, but by silence. This inner peace is the most powerful sign of all. It does not scream, it does not demand, it whispers in the quiet language of assurance. While the world may still be uncertain, your heart is not. While others may ask, what if it doesn't happen? You find yourself softly smiling, because the question is irrelevant. It already has. This is not delusion, it is truth, accessed from within. The outer world, in its delay, cannot steal your joy, because your joy was never waiting for results. It was born of assumption. To those who do not understand, this calm may appear naive, but to the one who walks by imagination and not by sight, it is strength. It is victory, not predicted, but lived in advance. And in the soil, the moment is buried. The result is not visible. And yet the gardener walks away in peace. Why? Because they trust the process. They do not dig it up in doubt. They water it, they wait, and they smile, knowing the bloom is inevitable. So it is with you. The moment you have impressed your desire into the subconscious, through feeling, through repetition, rest. This rest is not passivity. It is spiritual confidence. It is the refusal to be disturbed by appearances. It is the quiet joy that rises when you know that what you have felt in imagination is more real than what you see with your eyes. That peace is the echo of alignment. That calm is the signature of creation. So if you find yourself at peace in the middle of uncertainty, do not question it. Do not stir the waters with action or proof. Let the peace be enough. Let it speak louder than doubt. for it is not merely a sign. That victory is coming. It is victory itself. Taste it before it takes form, and the world must follow. Where you have already gone, there comes a quiet moment in the journey where you look back at who you once were, and you no longer recognize them. The person who once wrestled with doubt, who questioned their worth, who clung desperately to desires, begins to feel like a distant memory, not because they were wrong or broken, but because they were simply incomplete. You have shifted, you are becoming something new. And as the old identity dissolves, what once felt urgent now feels neutral. This is not indifference, it is transcendence. The desires that once burned within you with longing now rest in quiet certainty. You crave them with desperation because you have accepted them as already yours. You are no longer trying to become, you are being. And in that being, the old self fades away, not with drama, but with grace. What you once fought for, you now feel, and what you feel, you attract. I want to share with you a profound truth about what I call the state of divine solitude. For those who are chosen, those who carry a higher purpose, often find themselves walking a path of sacred isolation. In the Bible it states, many are called but few are chosen. This is not mere poetry. This is a precise description of the spiritual law that governs those marked for a higher purpose. Let me share with you what I call the law of divine separation. When you are chosen for a greater purpose, you will often find yourself naturally separated from the common patterns of friendship and relationship that others take for granted. You see, most people make this fundamental error. They view their solitude as a punishment, their isolation as a curse. But I tell you this, your solitude is actually a sacred preparation. Your isolation a divine protection. Consider what I call the state of heightened consciousness. The chosen ones operate at a frequency that naturally sets them apart. Their consciousness vibrates at a level that makes common relationships and friendships difficult to maintain. This is what the scripture means when it says, "Be ye not unequally yoked together." This is not about judgment or superiority. It's about vibrational alignment and spiritual compatibility. Let me share with you another profound aspect, what I call the law of conscious elevation. As your consciousness elevates, as your awareness expands, you naturally find yourself moving away from relationships that no longer match your frequency. Think about this deeply. When you are chosen, you enter what I call the state of divine preparation. Your solitude is not emptiness, it is fullness of purpose. Your isolation is not punishment, it is protection for your mission. Consider what happens in what I call the state of spiritual incubation. Just as a butterfly must undergo its transformation alone in its cocoon, the chosen ones must often undergo their spiritual transformation in solitude. This is what the Bible means when it says, "Come ye out from among them, and be ye separate." This separation is not about rejection of others. It's about alignment with your higher purpose. Let me share with you what I call the law of divine timing. Your period of solitude, your time without friends or relationships, is perfectly timed for your spiritual development and the fulfillment of your purpose. You see, while others may fill their lives with constant social interaction, the chosen ones are being prepared in solitude for something far greater than mere social connection. Consider what I call the state of sacred solitude. In this state, you are not truly alone. You are in communion with your higher self, with your divine purpose, with the infinite intelligence that chose you. Let me share with you what I call the state of divine focus. When you are chosen, your solitude becomes the lens through which your purpose becomes crystal clear, uninhibited by the distractions of casual relationships. In the Bible, it states, "Enter into thy closet and shut the door." This closet represents your state of sacred solitude, where the deepest revelations and transformations occur. Consider what I call the law of spiritual magnetism. Your heightened consciousness naturally repels those who vibrate at a different frequency. This is not rejection. It is divine protection and selection. This is what the scripture means when it says, touch not, taste not, handle not. The chosen ones must often abstain from common associations that would dilute their spiritual power. Let me share with you another profound dimension, what I call the state of consciousness. Your solitude marks you as distinct, not in a way of superiority, but in a way of divine purpose and specific calling. You see, most people make this crucial error. They desperately seek to belong, to fit in, to be part of the crowd. But I tell you this, the chosen ones are specifically selected to stand apart. Consider what I call the law of divine preservation. Your lack of friends and relationships is actually a preservation of your energy, your focus, your spiritual power for your higher purpose. This is what the Bible means when it says, no man can serve two masters. You cannot serve both your divine purpose and the constant demands of surface level relationships. Let me share with you what I call the state of spiritual incubation. Just as a seed must be buried alone in darkness before it can sprout, the chosen ones must often experience periods of profound solitude before their purpose can manifest. Think about this deeply. Your isolation creates what I call the vacuum of higher purpose. Nature abhors a vacuum, and this vacuum will be filled not with common relationships, but with divine connection and purpose. Consider what happens in what I call the state of divine preparation. Every moment of your solitude is actually preparing you for your greater purpose. Every instance of being alone is strengthening you for your mission. This is what the scripture means when it says, he that is alone with God is in the majority. Your solitude is not isolation from connection, it is connection with the highest source. Let me share with you what I call the law of spiritual refinement. Just as gold must be refined by fire, the chosen ones must be refined by solitude, separated from all that would dilute their purpose. You see, while others find comfort in constant companionship, the chosen ones find their comfort in their connection with their higher purpose, their divine mission. Consider what I call the state of sacred separation. This separation is not a punishment, but a privilege, not a curse, but blessing that allows you to maintain your spiritual frequency. Let me share with you what I call the state of divine singularity. Your solitude is actually a mark of your unique mission, your singular purpose in the grand tapestry of existence. In the Bible, it states narrow is the way, and few there be that find it. This narrowness represents the focused path of the chosen ones, a path that naturally excludes the many for the sake of the divine purpose. Consider what I call the law of spiritual authenticity. When you are chosen, you cannot maintain superficial relationships or friendships that require you to dim your light or lower your frequency. This is what the scripture means when it says, let your light so shine before men. The chosen ones cannot hide their light for the comfort of others, which often leads to natural separation. Let me share with you another profound aspect, what I call the state of conscious elevation. As your consciousness rises, you naturally find yourself unable to engage in the small talk, the drama, the surface level interactions that most friendships require. You see, most people make this fundamental error. They think loneliness and solitude are the same thing. But I tell you this, loneliness is the absence of others, while solitude is the presence of your higher self. Consider what I call the law of divine protection. Your lack of close relationships is actually a form of spiritual protection, keeping you focused on your mission and shielded from energies that would derail your purpose. This is what the Bible means when it says, come out from among them and be a separate. This separation is not rejection, but protection, not isolation, but insulation. Let me share with you what I call the state of spiritual intensity. The chosen ones carry such intense spiritual energy that most people naturally keep their distance, sensing something they don't understand. Think about this deeply, or solitude creates what I call the crucible of transformation. Just as metal must be heated alone to be transformed, the chosen ones must often undergo their transformation in solitude. Consider what happens in what I call the state of divine alignment. Every moment spent alone is actually a moment spent aligning more perfectly with your higher purpose, your divine mission. This is what the scripture means when it says, "But thou, when thou prayest, enter into thy closet." Your solitude is your prayer closet, your place of deepest communion with your divine purpose. Let me share with you what I call the law of spiritual magnetism. Your high frequency naturally repels those who vibrate at a lower frequency, not through any conscious choice, but through spiritual law. You see, while others seek constant companionship to feel complete, the chosen ones find their completion in their connection with their divine purpose. Consider what I call the state of sacred solitude. In this state, you are never truly alone. You are in constant communion with the infinite intelligence that chose you for your specific mission. Let me share with you what I call the state of divine discernment. Your solitude sharpens your ability to discern truth from illusion, genuine connections from superficial ones. In the Bible it states, "Be still and know that I am God." This stillness, this solitude becomes your gateway to the deepest knowing, the highest understanding. Consider what I call the law of spiritual acceleration. When you are free from the distractions of casual relationships and friendships, your spiritual growth accelerates at an unprecedented rate. This is what the scripture means when it says, "And Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed." The chosen ones must often withdraw from the world to maintain their connection with their higher purpose. Let me share with you another profound dimension, what I call the state of conscious purification. Your solitude serves as a purifying force, cleansing you of attachments that would hinder your spiritual mission. You see, most people make this crucial error. They think relationships and friendships are meant to complete them. But I tell you this, the chosen ones are already complete in their divine purpose. Consider what I call the law of divine timing. Your period of solitude is perfectly timed, preparing you for a purpose that requires your complete focus and undivided attention. This is what the Bible means when it says, "To everything there is a season." Your season of solitude is as divinely ordained as any other season in your life. Let me share with you what I call the state of spiritual intensity. The chosen ones carry such concentrated spiritual energy that it naturally creates a space around them, a buffer zone that few can penetrate. Hike about this deeply, or solitude creates what I call the vacuum of higher consciousness. This vacuum cannot be filled by ordinary relationships or friendships. It can only be filled by divine purpose. Consider what happens in what I call the state of divine preparation. Every moment spent alone is actually a moment spent in preparation for your greater purpose, your higher calling. This is what the scripture means when it says, "Many are called, but few are chosen." The very state of being chosen often requires a separation from the many, a walking apart from the crowd. Let me share with you what I call the law of spiritual resonance. You naturally attract or repel others based on your spiritual frequency as a chosen one. Your frequency is often too high for most to maintain prolonged contact. You see, while others find their comfort in numbers, the chosen ones find their comfort in purpose, in mission, in divine connection. Consider what I call the state of sacred solitude. In this state, you are never truly alone. You are in constant communion with the infinite intelligence that selected you for your specific purpose. Let me share with you what I call the state of divine amplification. In your solitude powers, your intuition, your connection to higher conscious becomes amplified without the interference of others' energies. In the Bible, it states, "When thou prayest, enter into thy closet." This closet represents not just physical solitude, but the sacred space where your powers are amplified through isolation. Consider what I call the law of spiritual preservation. Your lack of close relationships acts as your spiritual energy, keeping it pure and focused for your divine purpose. This is what the scripture means when it says, "Cast not your pearls before swine." The chosen ones must often withhold their deepest truths, their highest wisdom, which naturally creates distance from others. Let me share with you another profound aspect, what I call the state of conscious elevation. As your consciousness rises higher and higher, you naturally find yourself operating at a frequency that few can match or maintain. You see, most people make this fundamental error. They think connection means constant company. But I tell you this, the deepest connection often requires profound solitude. Consider what I call the law of divine protection. Your solitude serves as a protective shield, preventing the dilution of your spiritual energy by those who cannot understand or support your mission. This is what the Bible means when it says, "A prophet is not without honor, save in his own country." The chosen ones often find themselves set apart, even from those closest to them. Let me share with you what I call the state of spiritual intensity. Your very presence carries such concentrated spiritual energy that it naturally creates distance, not through any conscious choice, but through spiritual law. Think about this deeply. Your solitude creates what I call the crucible of transforming. Just as gold must be refined alone in the fire, the chosen ones must often undergo their transformation in isolation. Consider what happens in what I call the state of divine alignment. Every moment spent alone is actually a moment spent aligning more perfectly with your cosmic purpose, your divine mission. This is what the scripture means when it says, "The stone which the builders rejected has become the head of the corner." Your very rejection by others is often a sign of your selection by the divine. Let me share with you what I call the law of spiritual magnetism. Your high frequency naturally repels those operating at lower frequencies, not through any conscious choice, but through immutable spiritual law. You see, while others seek constant companionship to feel whole, the chosen ones find the wholeness in their connection with their divine purpose. Consider what I call the state of sacred solitude. In this state, you are never truly alone. You are in constant communion with the infinite intelligence that chose you for your specific mission. Let me share with you what I call the state of divine uniqueness. Your solitude is actually a marker of your unique spiritual fingerprint, your singular purpose that sets you apart from the masses. In the Bible, it states you are a peculiar people. This peculiarity, this uniqueness naturally creates a space between you and those who walk more common paths. Consider what I call the law of spiritual resonance. Your energy vibrates at such a specific frequency that it naturally creates distance from those who cannot match or maintain that frequency. This is what the scripture means when it says, "In the world, but not of it." The chosen ones must maintain their presence in the world while operating at a fundamentally different level of consciousness. Let me share with you another profound dimension, what I call the state of conscious elevation. As your awareness expands, you naturally find yourself unable to engage in the surface level interactions that most relationships require. You see, most people make this crucial error. They think isolation is a form of punishment, but I tell you this, for the chosen ones, isolation is often the highest form of preparation. Consider what I call the law of divine timing. Your season of solitude is perfectly orchestrated, preparing you for a purpose that requires your complete focus and undivided attention. This is what the Bible means when it says there is a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Your time of solitude is as divinely ordained as any other season in your life. Let me share with you what I call the state of spiritual intensity. The chosen ones carry such concentrated spiritual energy that it naturally creates a buffer zone around them, a space that few can penetrate. Think about this deeply. Your solitude creates what I call the vacuum of higher purpose. This vacuum cannot be filled by ordinary relationships or friendships. It can only be filled by divine connection. Consider what happens in what I call the state of divine preparation. Every moment spent alone is actually a moment spent in preparation for your greater purpose, your higher calling. This is what the scripture means when it says, "Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee." Your solitude is part of a divine plan that was set in motion long before your earthly existence. Let me share with you what I call the law of spiritual preservation. Your lack of close relationships actually preserves your spiritual energy, keeping it pure and focused for your divine purpose. You see, while others find their comfort in numbers, the chosen ones find their comfort in purpose, in mission, in divine connection. Consider what I call the state of sacred solitude. In this state, you are never truly alone. You are in constant communion with the infinite intelligence that selected you for your specific purpose. Let me share with you what I call the state of divine magnetism. Your very essence carries a frequency that naturally attracts some while repelling others, creating what appears to be isolation, but is actually perfect spiritual alignment. In the Bible, it states, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways." This fundamental difference in consciousness naturally creates separation from those operating at different frequencies. Consider what I call the law of spiritual ascension. As you ascend in consciousness, you naturally find yourself moving away from relationships that no longer serve your higher purpose. This is what the scripture means when it says, "Can two walk together except they be agreed?" The chosen ones often find themselves walking alone because few can agree with or understand their path. Let me share with you another profound aspect, what I call the state of conscious refinement. Your solitude serves as a refining fire, burning away all that is not aligned with your divine purpose. You see, most people make this fundamental error. They think being alone means being lonely. But I tell you this, for the chosen ones, being alone often means being in the most profound company, the company of divine purpose. Consider what I call the law of divine protection. Your apparent isolation is actually a protective barrier, shielding you from energies and influences that would dilute your spiritual power. This is what the Bible means when it says, "Come out from among them and be ye separate." This separation is not a punishment, but a privilege, not a curse, but a blessing. Let me share with you what I call the state of spiritual acceleration. Your solitude creates an environment where your spiritual growth can proceed unimpeded by the slower vibrations of others. I think about this deeply. Your aloneness creates what I call the crucible of transformation. Just as a diamond must be formed under intense pressure and in isolation, so must the chosen ones undergo their transformation alone. Consider what happens in what I call the state of divine alignment. Every moment spent in solitude is actually a moment spent in perfect alignment with your cosmic purpose. This is what the scripture means when it says, "When he shall appear, we shall be like him." Your isolation is preparing you for a manifestation of divine likeness that requires complete focus. Let me share with you what I call the law of spiritual resonance. Your high frequency naturally creates distance from those who cannot match or maintain that frequency. You see, while others seek constant companionship to feel complete, the chosen ones find their completion in their connection with their divine purpose. Consider what I call the state of sacred solitude. In this state, you are never truly alone. You are in constant communion with the infinite intelligence that chose you for your specific mission.